In this chapter, we will start the actual modeling of the Spartan helmet. If you want to follow along in any one of these videos and for some reason you weren't able to complete the last chapter, you can always start from the current video. We have a start and end chapters for all of these when it comes to the Maya files. So you're more than welcome to just start from any one of those. And you can of course also just go in and try to reverse engineer any one of the scenes. Now we picked up the image planes scene and we'll start modeling from this. Before we start modeling, I just want to quickly talk about some quick modeling theory. This here can be a deceptively hard shape to make. Now this is made of metal and it's formed in all sorts of crazy ways. It has different shapes, it has hard and soft edges together, and it has a few different pieces. So let's just talk about how we can block this in. I'm just going to do a quick screenshot of this. So we have a few different pieces. We have the first way I like to block in a model is in how can I physically separate these pieces. And we're going to separate out like so. This piece, the top piece, is going to be a separate piece, which makes it a lot easier to model. And then the rest is going to be as one piece. But what we can still separate them out into different chunks. So we can model this piece as one. And then we can model this piece as one. And then we can attach them together. We can also model this entire piece as one as well. And then we can cut out the holes here as well. In general, we want to work from general to specific. We don't want to just start with a single polygon here and extrude this polygon in. That's going to lead to really messy geometry and it's not going to lead to very clean results either. The way we're going to be starting off is by making a cylinder. This is because this actually is fairly cylindrical in its shape. We could have used different shapes as well, but it's a fairly decent approach. We will also work symmetrically as well, meaning we're only going to be creating the right side, the screen right side of this helmet. So let's start off by going to Shift right mouse button and cylinder. You can also create a cylinder from going up to the poly menu and clicking cylinder. Exactly the same. Throughout this series, we will assume that you have watched the first part as well, where we actually cover all the features, but we will also do this in a very slow and proper manner. And this is not going to be terribly hard in the way that we're going to be using only a select few tools over and over again. If we hit Control A, we can now go under Inputs. This just takes us to the channel editor or the channel box. Under Inputs, we can now set the radius, the height, but more importantly, we can set the subdivision axis. This controls how many subdivisions we have. Hit the F key to frame, and now we can set this to be 24. 24 is a good number because now we can always divide this by 4. So if we were to now, for instance, select these faces, like you don't have to follow along, this is just an example, we can now model only these faces, then we can duplicate them around, like duplicate once, twice, and 3 times. This is tricky if you use something like 13 faces or something like that. Or if we have 18 faces, something which isn't divisible by 4. I really prefer just to keep that as a general rule. Then we're going to be scaling it up. We can scale it up in the viewport or we can scale it up in the 2D view. What's important, or in the front view, what's important is that we scale on all axes. If you were to only look at one view like this, it's really easy that you only scale on one axis and it looks perfectly fine, but then you don't have, then it doesn't look great in the perspective view. So this is why I always have a perspective view enabled, just because it's really easy that it looks perfect in the front and side view and it looks dreadful in the perspective view. So I'm going to be scaling up so it approximately fits this shape. And then we're going to go to the side view. We can hit spacebar, Maya, and right view. And then we're also going to enable the X-ray mode as well. You can find X-ray right here next to the isolate button. This is how I will remember it. For some reason, it just doesn't work. Oh, it's that one because it looks so similar to this one because they're all just squares. So I go isolate because I remember that one. And then it's run right to the isolate button. And this is so that we can just display it in a bit better way. So we can actually see through it. Then we're going to be just scaling up a little bit more. This so it fits approximately here. Then we're going to be scaling it down just on the y-axis. And then we're going to be moving it up as well. I'm trying to match it so it fits within this area. So we just have to scale it down a little bit more, like so. And this is where it pays to be methodical. The more methodical you can be, the better it is. Now you can see that I scaled it without actually looking, or without actually hovering over the icons, and that is by holding down Shift and middle mouse button, and now you can just drag in the direction that you want to, which is really useful. Okay, so now this is pretty good in this direction. Let's go to the front view, Maya front view, and then we're going to scale it in just a little bit like so. And I'm just going to go zoom really far in, and then I'm going to do the same thing I said before, Shift middle mouse button, and then just scale out a little bit. So now we just know that this fits. And just make sure the center line is actually in the center. Then we are going to go into the perspective view and go into verts. And then we're going to be selecting through. What I'm doing now is I'm selecting the top and the bottom. Like you can see, I'm just dragging and selecting through. Then Control right mouse button to faces and to faces. And that selects all the faces associated with it. This just essentially converts it to faces, and since there is only one vertex, it has to convert to all of them to faces. Then we hit delete, and that deletes all of them. Then we can delete the left side as well, screen left. And now we have a nice starting point. So if we go to the right view now we can start to actually align this or actually match the reference a little bit. This is where I really want to have another view as well. I really want to have the front view as well when it comes to this, because now we're going to be aligning it, and it's quite important that this actually fits. So we can go to Panels, Layout, and 3 panes split left. And now you can see that we have 3 panes and it's split to the left. And in this one, I can now set this to be a front view. So now whenever I were to manipulate something in this, you can see it also moves here. So if I were to move this up, I can now see if this actually matches. So now I have 3 views. Now, for a lot of time, I don't actually need 3 of them, but it's really handy to be able to have them now. We can also enable the X-ray by going to the X-ray, one to the right of isolate. And then we're just going to be saving our scene. Make sure to save often. Maya is a bit crashy sometimes. Okay, so we're going to be starting on all the way to the right in the side view. And then we're just going to be dragging it up, just matching this line. Try to be as close as you can. Now there are 2 lines here. You see you have this line and you have that line. We're going to be matching it to this one, the brightest one. And this is what modeling really is like a lot of times. It's just placing points slowly and methodically. And this is now where we have to actually start to use the side view as well for this. Because now it matches in this view, but we have to make sure it matches in this view as well. So we can move it in a little, like so. So now we can move it in a little like so, and then we can move it just down a little bit. There we go. We can do the same thing here. And then we'll move these 2 and just move them all the way up so they fit right here. And then we have to move them back as well, like so. And it's important these 2 are not on the exact same plane, because they're not. We just go in here, we can just move them a little bit more in. Now we are not going to be sticking 100% to the reference. In this case, we're going to try to stick as close as we can, but in general, this will serve as a starting point. So we will do some changes to this eventually, just because that's going to make our life a lot easier. Now this is really a case of moving it up and moving it down, moving it up in one view and then moving it so it fits in the other view like so. And this is exactly what I mean, that something can look great in the front and side view, and it looks awful in the perspective view. So like so. So it's really important to make sure we have a nice clean curvature in the 3D view as well. Let's just review a little. I generally want these to be evenly spaced and very much up and down as well. So this is really a bit of a tweaking game at this point. You just have to spend some time to make sure this is nice and clean. The cleaner this is, the cleaner everything is going to be later on. We're also going to be moving these up so that they actually fit with this, so that we can make a nice clean cut here as well. So let's just make sure that this is a nice even distribution. We don't want it to go like this. We don't want it to have like a very nasty curve. We just want this to be nice and even. Okay, so this is generally fairly clean. What we can also do is, if we want to slide something, we can select the point, we can hit the D key, we can orient to an edge, and now we can hold Control and Shift, and we can aim it at a point, and now we can just start to move it down a little bit. Just so it's a little bit more aligned with this. It just looks a little bit nicer in the 3D view. Now, one thing we are going to be doing as well is we're going to be bashing this guy up pretty well. We're going to be sculpting him up. So it's not super important that everything is mega clean, but it's important that it's as clean as possible from the first polygons you lay down. But the final result is not going to be 100% insanity in the cleanliness. Then we are going to be adding a sphere to this as well. This is where this shape resembles mostly a sphere, so let's use that as a starting point. We're going to be using a sphere, and then we're going to be setting the segments to 24. This is going to be in the subdivision axis. You can see what this does. If we hit the F key, now we can see that we frame this, and now we can set this to be 24. And now this will have 24 subdivision axis like so. We can also set the subdivision height to something less extreme. We can set to something like 6 or 7. Maybe we want to set this to 8. So it's nice and clean. And then we can start to move this into place. You can just move this all the way down. So if you don't need it, we can just move it all the way down like this, and then we can just bring it back up like so if we do actually need it, which is a nice little tip. Now, if we just scale it up, you can see that this is going to be pretty hard to work with. Like if we were to just attach it like so, you can see we have a really nasty curve which we have to cut through here. But we can be smart about this. We can rotate it like so. And now you can see that it's a lot easier to get a nice clean curve going through it like so. We can just scale it up a little bit on this axis. And now we still have to, of course, tweak this line. There is no way we can actually just make this nice and clean, but we can tweak it as much as we can. Then we can delete this portion of it. So we select this polygon, Shift, double click, and that selects the loop. Hit the delete key. Then we double click this section and we hit the delete key. Now the only thing we have is this portion. Now we have a problem up here where we have a triangle, and this is not very pretty topology. So we're going to be fixing this up, but before we do any of that, we are going to delete half as well. So we can go to the front view, we can just drag this guy up, and we can isolate selected just so we don't have any other junk. Go into faces, and then we can select half, and then just hit the delete key. And then we can Control 1 as well to get rid of isolate selected. The hotkey again is Control 1, or we can click up here. So now let's fix this issue. What I'll do is I'll select a single vert, then I'll use a bevel on it. Control B. Now this doesn't solve it at all, but what it does, it makes it a little bit, it gives us one more segment up here in terms of the height. So it's now just softened off a little bit. We don't have this nasty triangle, and it's a bit easier just to connect this up. Then we can start to connect these up. If we use Shift right mouse button, multi-cut, and select this one, select here, and then we can start to cut this up so it's nice and quadrated. I really prefer to keep this around the center, so around 50%. Then we hit right mouse button to commit to the cut. Then we select this one, and we cut it here. Select this one, we cut it here. Now, it doesn't matter if I'm 100% accurate or not, because this area is going to be mostly covered up by, you see this area on the top, like so. And now we still have an end gun, so what we can do, we can cut this up, and cut it there, and cut this here. Now you can also see that the history is starting to grow. It's not terrible, but it's also not amazing. We have a little bit of history here and a little bit of history here. So what we can do, we can hit Shift Alt D with both of them selected. This is something you might see me do accidentally throughout the series. I'll just be working like so, and then suddenly it's just gone. That's because this is so ingrained in my muscle memory after like 10 years of modeling in Maya that it's sometimes hard to just turn it off. But if that ever happens, it's Shift Alt and D to delete history. Then what we can do is we can start to align this up a little bit. We can select the edges, select edge, and select the edge. In this case, I think I actually want to disable the X-ray. It's a bit easier to see. And then we can just drag it down like so. Now in this case, I want to use the other line. These are not going to be perfectly aligned, so we just have to move them down like so. If it doesn't orient perfectly when you select it, then we can just hit the D key and just hit the actual edge you want. Move it down like so, select it, hit the D key to orient it, or hold on the D key and then hit the edge rather. And if the manipulator is too big, what you can do, you can just hit the minus key and then you can make the manipulator smaller. Feels a little hacky, but it works. And like I said before, the cleaner you are at this stage, the cleaner everything is going to be. Every single time I make a bad model, it can always be attributed to, well, I was sloppy in the earlier phases. And now I just have to use the X-ray feature just so I can see what's going on. And again, super important to look in both the 3D view and the 2D view. And by 2D view, I just mean the orthographic views. And now I'm just evaluating. Whenever I'm blocking something out like this, it's really important to evaluate the shape because it can get quite messy quite quickly. So in this case, I can see that this needs to be a little bit softer or a little bit rounder. So I can select the polygon, select the face. I can just move this out a little bit. We can disable world and disable object just to make sure we only have one enabled. W key, I'll just hold on a W key and now we can just set this to world. Now we can just move this out a little bit. This way you get a nice clean curve throughout. And we definitely need another segment in between here because you can see this is getting crazy stretched right now. Before we add a loop in between, I'm just going to select this loop, Shift right mouse button, and edit edge flow. And now you can see it just distributes the cells very nicely along the just in the middle of it, just so it's nice and evenly spaced. And then we can add more geometry. You can see it's still incredibly incredibly rectangular. So shift right mouse button, multi-cut. You can now see if we try to add a loop in the middle, just hit a control key, you can now see that this is entirely straight. We want this to preserve the curve. Of course, we could select it or add this and edit edge flow, but we can do this in one command. Shift right mouse button, and now we get up settings for it. And now we can do enable edge flow. You can also find these settings under the tool settings. Just double click the tool, and now we can just enable edge flow here as well. And now if you were to insert a cut, you can now see what happens. This now preserves the edge flow. So what I want to do is I want to hover over anywhere here, really doesn't really matter, and then just middle mouse button click, and that's going to put it right in the center. And now you can see we just have a lot more resolution. And then we can select this guy and edit edge flow. And we can just do this a few times. And now we have a pretty nice base for this, which we can connect up here. So we'll select both of them, shift right mouse button, and we'll set this to combine. And now these will be combined into one shape. Shift Alt Delete to delete history with this selected. And now we can Control S to save this. Now we can bridge these two together. It's always worth just trying the bridge tool and see if it actually works. It's a bit funky sometimes, so let's see if this works. We have to select the range from here and up and this and up. So select this polygon or this edge, shift and double click this edge, and now you can see it selects the range. Select this edge and shift double click to select the entire range going down. And now we can bridge these two. We know it's going to bridge in terms of the segments because we made them both with the same amount of segments. These both have 12 segments, which means that these are going to work fine. So select them both, shift right mouse button and select bridge. And this, due to some miracle, actually works now. It's very funky if it works. Sometimes it just doesn't work at all. But in this case, we were lucky. In the next chapter, we will build the bottom part and start to refine things a little bit.